Welcome to the True Connections Recovery Podcast. I'm Brigham Elton. I am a pornography and sexual addiction counselor. We are going to help others to overcome pornography use, sexual abuse, and sexual fear by chasing healthy sexuality and being aware of the messages that are being sent to us sexually all around us. At times, these topics are hard to talk about, but our goal is to promote conversation and to help individuals feel understood and to help you feel like you're not alone. I'm so grateful you've chosen to be with us today. The next portion of this book is called Talking About Romantic Relationships. And in this first section is we do this Assessing Your Values questionnaire. I've been asked to go through each of these individually and then answer what I would say. And so you're going to hear like my personal value system here. And I'm not saying that my personal value system is correct, right? But these are the things that I believe, and it might trigger some thoughts for you. And what I would tell you is just like trust your parent gut. You know, like, yeah, I may have more experience in this world teaching kids and the way that certain parenting styles turn out. So I would love for you to consider the things that I believe are really helpful. But again, like, I would trust your parent gut over anything else. This is called Assessing Your Values Romantic Relationships. And the first question is, at what age do you think you should begin talking to your child about relationships? Now, I've noticed that with my kids, and my oldest child is 5. I have a 5, 3, and a 1-year-old. And I've noticed that my 5-year-old is already starting to talk about relationships and boyfriends and who she loves and girlfriends. And like, I think that tells me that she's beginning to establish a norm in her subconscious. Now, do I think that this is going to affect her forever? A little bit, but it's not going to set a concrete foundation forever. But I think that now is the time that I am teaching about relationships. And I'm teaching about those in the way that I talk about them, in the way that I act in my relationship, and the way that I actually teach about it, right? And I think that those go in a certain order. The one that has the most effect is the way that I act in my relationship. Like, my daughter is going to learn how men treat their wives by the way that I treat mine. I think that then how I talk about other people's relationships, and then finally the way that I teach, are all affecting her view of what relationships are. Again, I think the time to teach is early, and I want to do most of my relationship teaching by the time my child is like 13 and 14 years old, and then I just hope to be a part of them learning via experience. The second question is, what level of maturity do you think is necessary before it's okay to start dating? Now, maturity is really hard to measure, but the things that I would be looking for before my child starts dating is, one, is openness. That my child is being open with me and owning their choice. Like, when you begin dating, like, you're putting yourself into an phenomenal place of reward, but also a place of risk. And I want my child to be an owner of their choice and to believe that they are ready. Now, I'm hoping that my child participates in social activities way earlier, right? That they like set a pattern of creating friendships that are within both genders. But when they start like, I'm going to do this with you as an individual, I hope that they have learned to respect others' boundaries and respect their choice, and also to own their own ability to choose. The next question is, what level of maturity do you think is necessary before becoming physically intimate? I think the answer to this is very similar to the one before. I think in order to be physically intimate, I would love if my children can be verbal about that physical intimacy and what it means. And if they can be verbal about what it means to them, I think that they can then make choices based on that value system. And like, I love when my child has decided that this is what this means to me, and so I'm going to choose this behavior that reflects that decision. Now, honestly, I don't really care too much about what that value actually is, but I just want them to have one and to have a standard of what physical intimacy means to them and what relationship and what commitment comes with that choice. The fourth question is, what personal development do you think needs to take place before you can be in a successful, fulfilling relationship? Obviously, they're talking about significant other relationships here. Honestly, like when I think about that, I think that like a lot of my growth came because of my relationships and having to fit with another person and sacrifice and learn to love. And so honestly, like I think it's a space of learning. The one thing I want to reaffirm, like we talked about with the maturity, is like I want someone to believe in their ability to choose. And if they believe that they're a chooser and that I can make this relationship what I want it to be, I can choose to be in it or not, and they really feel capable of that choice, then I think that they are ready to learn via a relationship. Like my relationships have taught me so much about how to adjust to another person, how to connect to another person in their way, that I think that they're a great place of learning. But I think that place is unsafe if someone doesn't believe that they have choice and doesn't have confidence, again, in their ability to choose. Finally, in this section is, do you think it's better to be friends first? Now, I loved my relationships that came out of friends, and I do think it's important for an individual to experience opposite gender or heterosocial friendships before they're in a partnership. I think that that is a very important thing to have happen. Yet, I wouldn't say it's required to be in a relationship that you came through the friend lane. I really enjoyed coming from the friend lane, and I'm going to tell my kids that I really enjoyed being friends first and then dating second. Right, even with the individuals that I dated pretty right away after meeting them, I would try to still come through a few friend lane stages. But there also is a real excitement in just connecting with someone in a moment. And I want my child to hear my opinion and then make their own choice. The second section is called Exploring Dating and Boundaries. And the first question here is, what dating activities are acceptable? How do these change as your child grows older? I think the key here is providing safety, and I just want my child to think about, like, do I feel safe? Is this a situation that's going to build connection, or is this a situation that's going to create pressure? And so the first thing I would be trying to do is to get my child to talk about what they're doing and what are the risks, what are the rewards. Like, obviously you can't talk about it like that formally, but as my kid tells me, like, hey, like, we're going to go up the canyon and have a fire. And I'm like, okay, like, who are you going with? Like, do you feel safe with those people? Like, what time do you plan on being home? Like, those kind of questions to help my child think about, like, okay, do I feel safe with them? Like, do I think this is a good decision? And help them to own their choice, because only when they own their choice can they then look back and go, okay, my choice created this consequence, right? Now, as my child gets older, like, this is the chance for them to go out and to learn how their choices are affecting their future, right? And so the closer and closer my child gets to turning like 18 and being a legal adult, like, I want them to be making more and more of those choices on their own. I want to set a pattern of, like, I have an opinion. As a dad, I think it's important that you hear my opinion, but I will love you no matter what you choose, and I will be here for you when you fail and when you succeed, celebrating and then mourning with you when those things are hard. And that's the message I want to send as a parent, is like, hear my advice, make your choice, and know that I will be there with you, celebrating or mourning whether you succeed or fail. Next question, what qualities or attributes are valuable to you in a dating relationship? To me, some things that are really valuable, one is just like choosing to be kind to others, especially those who perceive to be below you. Being kind to those who seem less powerful or less socially skilled or less athletic, and choosing kindness when you don't have to. That's something that has always been very attractive to me. It's also really attractive for me for someone to, I'd rather, like, on the side of, like, being an overconfident chooser and, like, being a victim, like, I would choose the overconfident chooser consistently, because that's something that really is attractive to me. How much privacy do you think your child should be allowed to have when it comes to personal relationship? This is hard. I really struggle with this because, like, privacy can sometimes be an excuse for secrecy. And I think that secrecy is when we start to hit moments of danger. And so I think what's important here is openness. Now, we can't force our child to tell us everything. But I really think we want to do everything we can to be involved and know what's going on in our child's life. Now, when our child starts to get secretive, and that's normal because they're trying to establish independence, I think that's a great time to talk to them about their friends and their social life, because it's easier for them to talk about someone else than to talk about themselves. So this one, I really want to give you the answer. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think I'm going to struggle with that balance, just because, like, I don't want to control my child, but I do want to be aware of what they're choosing. And I think that's sometimes unrealistic for me to believe that I'm going to have full knowledge of what's going on in my child's life. But hiding really does scare me, because it keeps me from being able to help my child. What boundaries do you think should be set for alone time together? For me, it's about, like, a couple things. One is, like, where are you alone? Are you alone in, like, total privacy? Are you alone in, like, semi-privacy? I remember growing up, we had this, like, family room, and the TV was there, but, like, they didn't have a door on it. And so anyone who walked by could see you. You were kind of in private, but someone could see you, right? And I think that places like that bring a lot more safety than some place where someone believes that no matter what, I'm never going to be interrupted. I think teaching our children about that really does help them to be like, hey, like, this isn't just for your safety, like, this is for your partner's safety as well, right? That, like, someone could be there is really helpful. This, like, semi-privacy is, I think, the place to be for this, like, alone time together. Like, go on a walk in a park, or, like, on a hike where you randomly pass people, but, like, something like that where there's, like, semi-privacy, I think, is really safe. We also had a boundary growing up, and I plan on having this boundary too, that, like, friends don't go in rooms, especially with shut doors. I mean, we do this now with our 5-year-old, that, like, if you're playing in that room, like, the door needs to be open. And that's true for all of our kids with all of their friends. Like, we don't shut doors when we play. And I think that, again, helps a child who may not be in the place of power to feel safe. Next, how do you feel about co-ed groups, sleepovers? Are there boundaries that should be set for these? Individually, we're a no sleepover family. Like, I am willing to pick up my kid as late as necessary, but I really don't believe in sleeping over. Now, we did a lot of camping, and I anticipate letting my kids go camping. But I think for me, especially while the kids are living in my home and, like, previous to the age of 18, I'm going to ask them to only go camping with people of the same gender, especially being in the same tent, right? And we'll just talk about the risks. And again, my child will get to choose, even though it may be something that I don't believe in. Next, is it ever okay for a child's boyfriend, girlfriend to spend the night? I struggle with this in my home, especially when a kid is under the age of 18. Now, if a kid is in college or whatever and they're in a significant other relationship, that might change things. But when they were young, like, that's against my value system, and it is my home. And so I'd be asking them not to. Next, how should physical boundaries be set, such as no private dates, no closed stores, etc.? I think that my wife and I will, like, come up with those together for each kid, even though I anticipate them being very similar. I think it's important that a child participates in the boundary creation, because then they feel like it's their boundary, not just our boundary, right? And so in a moment of strength and connection with my child and me and my wife, I hope to set these boundaries together, even though I anticipate them being quite similar. What will you do if you discover that your child is being sexually intimate? How will your response differ depending on your child's age? Honestly, like, it depends on the situation. Like, if my child chooses to be sexually active in high school, like, I'll feel sad and just scared for them, right? And the consequences that could be around the corner according to their sexual choice, because they're taking a moment that has more sexual risk than if they choose to wait until they're in like a long-term marriage relationship. And so that's kind of the way I'm going to feel. Now, I'm going to communicate to that child love, and that like I'm invested in them, and like I believe that they can do it. And if that's the life that they choose, then I love them and I want them to be happy and I want to be part of their life, independent of what their choices may be, whether they're within my value system or not. Right? And that response will differ with age based on like, is my child ready to take on the consequences of sexual choice, right? And as my child gets older and older, like, again, I'm going to be asking my child and telling them that I believe that the path to the most happiness and peace in their life is by saving sexuality for a long-term marriage commitment. But I will love them and support them anyway, and I want to participate in whatever life that they choose. And if they choose a life of being sexually active early, that I'm going to do everything I can to help them know the risk and help them learn how to minimize their risks via contraception and things like that. But I want them to know that like I'm invested in them no matter what, and like it's not going to change the way that I love them. The third section is entitled Exploring Relationship Impact. The first question is, what are your memories about your own first romantic relationship? My memories are clouded by the vision that I have now of relationships. In the time, like, it was so all-inclusive. Like, everything I thought about was this person. I was, like, 16 years old, and, like, honestly, I thought about them constantly. And it really started to create a standard for me for what a relationship was. Now, looking back, it's obvious that I didn't really know. Like, I was basing this relationship kind of off of what I heard from my friends, and, like, I did in this relationship what I thought everyone else was doing. And it was really a time where I tried to conform and wasn't really making decisions based on my own value system. Now, I was considering, like, what is my parents' relationship like? Like, what have I seen in the movies about romantic relationships? Like, what have I seen from my friends? But that was what I was basing this relationship off of, was just them. And because I was the less experienced partner in that couple, like, I really did take a back seat to the leadership of that relationship to my first relationship, right? My first partner. And really, like, it was amazing to me looking back, like, how uneducated I was about what a relationship was. And honestly, things took years for me to learn about what a relationship actually was and how a healthy relationship is shaped. Next, how would you define love? I would say that love is a choice and an action. Love starts with an attraction and this desire to be with another person, and then eventually that be with another person grows to, like, we want to build an us unit that is connected, and I want to share my life experience with you and build a life experience and potentially a family together. And then that grows into an us love, and that love again is chosen consistently over and over and over again, and it is fueled by intimacy, but it is a choice independent of whatever is going on in life. Third, how do you think your first relationship impacts future relationships? I kind of mentioned this before, but I think it sets a standard for what is normal. Like, it's amazing to me to, like, hear about individuals' first relationships and realize that they're still comparing their relationships today to their relationships that was first. Because it really does establish this idea of what is normal, because at first we have no frame of reference. How do you think a romantic relationship impacts your quality of life as a teenager? What about as an adult? Honestly, like, I was in and out of relationships most of my time in, like, high school. Pretty much like junior and senior year. And I really enjoyed parts of that, but I do feel like it did limit in a little bit my social interactions, because I was a very committed relationship person, and I think that's a positive quality, but I think it did limit some of my social interactions, especially because I lived in a small town and I kind of stayed in that small town most of the time. And as an adult, like, I think relationships and having someone to share something with, and a love that you can consistently go home to, gives you an amazing foundation of safety that allows you to take more risks. Like, I have this company in part because of the safety that existed between me and my wife, and knowing that like she was invested in me no matter what. And that allowed me to like spread my wings a little bit and to try to become and grow into something better. How do you think your own relationships impact your child's relationship? Again, mentioned this earlier, but I think that my child is learning how a man treats a woman by the way that I treat my wife, and like what they see, and they see the extremes. Like sometimes they don't see the everyday, they see when it's really good and they see when it's really bad. And like in those moments, I'm teaching my child what a relationship is, right? And I think subconsciously that sets one of their standards for what a relationship can be. And so I think my relationship sets a pattern and sometimes even a rut that my child is going to naturally kind of pull to, and hopefully makes efforts to be better than me. Finally, how much impact does your partner's personality have on your own personality? Is one of you more dominant than the other? Honestly, I chose my partner because I was hoping she would have an effect on my personality and help me to become more empathetic and understanding and like aware of everyone around me. And so, yeah, I think she totally affects my personality. I think I've become a better human because as an us unit, like, we complement each other. Is one of you more dominant than the other? I mean, in specific areas, yeah, right? Like when we make our, like, food decisions, or when we make our money decisions, or we make our, like, parenting decisions, or when we make, like, our school decisions and education decisions, like, someone's opinion has more weight. But the other partner's opinion is always heard and considered. And we have kind of a deal that like, look, this is your call, but like, this is my opinion on it. And then we consider each other's opinions and allow the person who is leading in that area to make the decision. And then there's certain places where it really is 50-50 and like the two of us need to come to a decision. The final section of this assessing your values is entitled Exploring Relationship Involvement. The first question is, do you want to meet your child's significant other and her parents? Heck yeah, I want to meet them. Like, I want to know who they are. I want to know their value system. I want to know if my child is safe in their home. Like, I'm going to make a real effort to get to know them, right? And like, I'm going to try to get to know this significant other as well. And I want to have a phenomenal relationship with them. Like, I want to be a father and then eventually a father-in-law who, like, really treats that person as a son and makes an effort to be involved in their life, right? And, like, that's going to start from the very beginning, that, like, I'm excited to be a part of this relationship and have that connection with them. What if you don't approve of your child's significant other? How will you manage this roadblock with your child? Again, it matters the situation, right? Like in high school, like there might be more that I would do to like monitor when they're together and like give less opportunities for privacy in my home. And I would be open with my child about my fears that like, look, I love you, I want the best for you, and like I'm nervous about this person. And it's important that I follow my dad gut and I am aware of what's going on. And I just want to be here for you. And it's really like a sign of investment in you. And my child is going to think that I'm trying to control them, but consistently I'm going to try to remember them that like I'm invested in you and this is a thing of love. Now later on when this child is more independent, right, like maybe living on their own, maybe in school, maybe working, whatever, I don't feel like I get the giant say in that who my partner chooses, who my child chooses as a partner. I really want to make an effort for them to feel loved and feel like they're worth a phenomenal relationship and treatment. But beyond that, like I want to make a real significant effort to accept whoever my child chooses. I want to accept that person and help them feel like, you know what, they can be in my relationship because I think they will rise to that connection, right? And like I think they'll feel uncomfortable if they don't belong in our value system. And so really who my child chooses, I choose because I believe in my child's ability to choose. And I've seen a negative side of that, right? When like a parent is kind of disapproving of a partner, I think it just isolates the child. And that's the last thing that I want with my children. How involved do you think parents should be in their teens' early relationship? I think involved is a different word than I would use. I think a parent should monitor and be aware of a child's relationships and just try to be involved and be part of it and like talk to their child about it and connect with them about it and try to do so without judgment, but just like a real inquisitive trying to learn, and then not a lesson, but just to learn. And naturally, I think those lessons happen. How involved do you think parents should be in later relationships? Again, I'm hoping to be aware and involved. Like, I just want to know what's going on in my child's life just because I love and invested in them. Like, I don't want to control their choices. I just want to be there for when it's hard and celebrate for them when it goes amazing. And that's it. Like, I just want to be there. And like, I think as I'm there, naturally, like, my values will show up, especially if they try to verbalize what they believe in my presence. Like, it just naturally happens, right? Like, remember when you were talking to your parents about something, you were telling them something that your friend did, and then you like edited it because you knew what your mom was going to say, and that your kids are already hearing you say it by just talking to them about what you believe. And so I just want to be there when they talk about what they believe. How prescriptive do you think family values should attempt to be? I think these family values should be enforced in your home, right? Like, it's your home. You get to choose what gets done there. And like, when you're underneath that home, then you can be in that value system. What I also think that like, it's important that I give space to my child to choose their values, right? Like, if my child just lives under my values until they leave my home and then I leave them without any values, like, that's not useful. And so my goal is to allow my child to explore and develop their own value system and then learn to speak about it and think about it and be conscious about what they believe is healthy, true, and right. And then I think as those values become their own, those then translate out of the home and help the child to be successful long term, not just while we live in my home and be comfortable. Excuse me. How do you plan to communicate these values to your child? Do you think it's important to do so before she's involved in a romantic relationship? Yeah, I think it's important to communicate your values like right friggin' now. Like, start communicating your values to your child and learn to like verbalize what you are doing, right? And like, I like to look at a choice that I make and then tell my child, I did this because of this, because I believe this, right? I got annoyed driving the other day because I felt like someone cut me off, whether they did or didn't, it doesn't matter. I felt like someone cut me off and I went, oh, and then I went, and I see my daughter look at me because she's very aware of my emotions. And I said to her, like, look, I'm choosing to let that go because this isn't something that's worth reshaping my day over. And right in that moment, I'm teaching a value that like this petty thing isn't worth my emotional workup. I think that is very, very important to be verbalizing your whys to your child, because then you can help them see the value behind the behavior, not just the behavior that's good or bad or whatever, but like the value behind it. And as a child sees the value behind the behavior, they can then learn and then start applying that in different areas of their life, right? And my child consistently sees me do that kind of horse lips thing. And so now she's like, okay, what happened? And I'm like, you know what? I'm letting it go. Like, I'm choosing to not let this thing sway my emotional experience of the day. Again, that is teaching a value. I want to close with this paragraph. Thinking about your relationship history can be painful or confusing. If you find that these questions are difficult to answer, it may be a good idea to talk about your feelings with a close friend or a therapist. Even if you've had harmful or damaged relationships in the past, you can pass along healthy values to your child and help guide early dating relationships. A good way to do this is to identify qualities in friendships or other relationships, respect, support, etc., that are valuable to you, and then translate these to romantic relationships. I hope this was valuable to have me as an individual that you can go through some of these questions with and kind of bounce ideas off of. Obviously, these are just my ideas, but I think they hopefully are sparking like memories and maybe viewpoints you're like, hey, like I want to adopt that. Or maybe you run into something you're like, man, I totally disagree with that. Awesome. Don't do it my way. Like, I love that. I just think the purpose here is to think about your value system and make some decisions of how you want your home to look. Thank you so much for being here with us today. please share. This really helps us to succeed as a community as you share information like this. And if you ever feel like you could use some individual help, please set up a free consultation. You can visit us at our website at trueconnectionsrecovery.com and set up a free consultation there. Thank you.